Is your roller door as noisy as this one? Well, today I've got some roller door maintenance tips that will get your door running as quiet as a new one. And these aren't just DIY tips, these are professional roller door servicing tips with guaranteed results. And the best thing is, it's all easily done at home with basic tools. Almost all noises come from inside of the roll. So today we're going to show you what makes the noise, what products you can use to get rid of the noise, and how to access the components that make the noise. Today, we're focusing on the noisiest part of the roller door, the torsion springs. The first thing to do is mark out and remove both the guide tracks. This will ensure they go back exactly how they came off. Simply place a small mark on the wall next to both of the tracks and you know exactly where they need to go when you're ready to replace them. The next thing we're going to do is to remove the tracks by taking out the fixing bolts that secure the tracks to the wall. In this instance, I have 13mm coach bolts in plastic plugs in a brick wall. So I'm using a 13mm long socket with my Makita impact driver. You might have Tech screws or timber screws or maybe even Dyna bolts. If your tracks are welded to the post, good luck. You're going to have to cut those off. So the tracks can be removed with the door closed or open, but it's a bit easier to do it with the door open, as you don't have as much curtain inside of the track. But either way is just fine. If your roller door motor was installed correctly, you'll have some security pinning screws in the top sheet of the roller door. If you stop the door approximately 60 centimeters from the floor, you'll find the last pinning screw on each side. Remove these and then we can access the inside of the roller door. A security screw will fix the sheet to the drum wheel so no one can lift it up from the outside. If pinning screws aren't fitted to your door, somebody can easily lift the door up about this high and climb under into your garage. Okay, so now the pinning screws are out, we're just going to put the door into manual so the door can be completely unrolled. On this particular door, there looks like there's approximately 1 meter of curtain left that will need to be unrolled so we can access the internal springs. Now just pull the curtain down far enough until the springs are visible. In this case, I'm just using the motor's manual release mechanism to lock the door back into position. If your door doesn't have a motor, you might need a friend to help you hold the door into position. As you can see, we can now access the noisy springs. But first, let's take a quick tour of our magic product. It's HHS 2000 by Worth. It's a high pressure resistant, highly adhesive synthetic lubricating oil. Bit of a mouthful. It also comes in a 700ml forklift grease pack. This is for warehouse use, but it's exactly the same as the HHS 2000 product. We've tried over 15 different products for garage door noises, and the Worth HHS 2000 is the only product we find that works the best. As you can see, the spray exits the can. It's a very thin solvent. It penetrates really well, but the solvent rapidly evaporates, leaving behind a highly adhesive film. It's a bit like a grease, but it doesn't even compare to WD-40, which doesn't have any grease or adhesive components in it. So this is a far superior product, and we highly recommend the HHS 2000. Okay, now generously coat the springs in the HHS 2000. It's vital in making sure to penetrate through the spring onto the main inner shaft, because this is where the springs rub and make all the noise. As you can see, even after applying a generous amount, the HHS 2000 does not drip, and it will not drip ever. It's highly adhesive, even though it goes on extremely thin and then evaporates and thickens up after about 10 seconds. Doesn't even drip as you apply it. It's fantastic stuff. What we're looking at here is the old factory applied grease. It's just a basic multi-purpose grease that they mush into the spring, and it's obviously hardened up and not doing its job anymore. It doesn't really even get applied to the shaft, so it never really done its job in the first place. That's why we're using the penetrative oil / grease substance that gets through the spring and onto the shaft, and then it sets. It makes a coating between the shaft and the spring. which stops all the noise. So how a roller door works is the spring is attached to one end of the drum wheel, and the other end it's attached to the shaft. So the shaft is a stationary object, and then the spring spins around, spins the drum wheel, and pulls up the curtain. A bit like a rubber band, wraps the curtain around the drum wheel and helps the door to open up without too much effort at all. So we're just applying the lubricant, HHS 2000, to the other spring, obviously penetrating through the spring onto the shaft for maximum effect. And while we're up here, we're just going to spray some into this curtain retainer, which holds the curtain level as it rolls around. Creates a little bit of friction as well. A minor noise, but nothing too major compared to the springs, but this will help the door run really smoothly. We're also going to apply some in between the shaft and the drum wheel. Because there's no bearing, the drum just spins around on the shaft. So it's a nylon drum wheel, creates some friction as well, so that'll reduce that. Now we're just going to unlock the motor on the garage door. The curtain will spin itself up off the ground. So you'll most likely find that the door hasn't quite aligned itself with the top of the roll and the bottom sheet, but that's easy to fix. Just grab the opposite end and pull it over to the side that needs aligning, where the sheet has to line up with the top of the roll. As you can see, without the tracks on the door, it's quite easy to get level and aligned properly. So on the way up, the door is still noisy, but once it's opened and closed a few times, all the noise will disappear just like magic. Just have to wait for the HHS to spin around inside the springs a bit and work its way around, and we'll be all good by the end. We're just going to put those security pinning screws back into the same holes into the sheet. Quite an easy job, just grab your screwdriver or drill and pop them back in. While I've got the tracks off, we're just going to check the corner guide rollers. In this door, these are Gliderol guide roller wheels. This one's completely worn out actually. So we'll just pop him out and have a look. Yep, the shaft or axle has completely worn down to a toothpick. So we'll just flick this one away and swap it out for a new one. And look at that axle, it's ready to go back in. It will clip into the holder really well and function as a roller should. This will keep the metal edge away from the inside of the guide track. So you won't get much noise from a roller if you have any metal scraping. These rollers don't have a bearing, so they will squeak as it's plastic on plastic. So we always put a bit of silicone spray in there. It'll also make the roller last a lot longer. If you still get any squeaking, you might need to put a bit of HHS 2000 just on the axles, but don't get any on the nylon felt fabric. That will cause sticking in the tracks. The left-hand roller is completely fine. It obviously favours the right-hand track a lot more, which is quite normal, so we'll leave that one alone. Actually, we might put a bit of silicone spray in there just to make it last a bit longer. Okay, so the door hasn't lined up with the line we put on the wall just yet. So we're going to have to wiggle the curtain over to the left about 15 to 20 millimeters. Or until the track lines up with our mark. Then we can go to fixing the track back onto the wall. That's ended up exactly where we want them, so that's great. Now we'll go through and put each bolt back into the track. Then we'll go through and tighten them up with our impact driver. So that's all our coach bolts back into the wall. We'll just check our tracks are lined up properly. Do one more final check, make sure everything's lined up with our marks, and then we'll grab our impact driver, if you're lucky to have one, or grab your spanner or socket set, and go ahead and tighten up those bolts into the wall, still making sure your tracks are lined up with your previous mark. Now before we tighten the other track, it's best to close the door almost completely, because we want to get the gapping just right on these tracks. We don't want it too tight. If we had the door open, it's easy to put the tracks on too tightly. So with the door up just a little way from the floor, we can just get the maximum gap without going too far in or out. There's about 5 to 10 millimeters of play between the two tracks. You don't want too much slapping around left to right of the curtain, but you also don't want it to be too tight and jam when it gets to the bottom. And that will wear out the rollers as well, quicker than you need to. So here we're just checking the left to right play. We don't want any more than that. It's pretty good. It's about 10 millimeters of play, maybe even 5. You don't want it too tight, and you don't want it too much looser than that either. Otherwise it will slap around in the tracks as it's closing. So as long as the door closes by hand, nice and smoothly, and doesn't jam, the gap's fine. You'll probably find most doors have a sticker that says don't oil or grease. So we're not oiling or greasing the tracks, but we are using a silicone-based spray. It's actually silicone spray. This will prevent any rust in the tracks and corrosion, especially if you live down near the ocean or water or very wet areas. The tracks will definitely rust out and get a lot of friction. And this will damage your nylon felt on the edge of the door. We've been using silicone spray on tracks for over 15 years, and it protects all the tracks that we've done and hasn't caused any damage to the nylon felt at all. And it's not an oil or grease-based spray. Very safe once the solvent evaporates. It just leaves a very fine dry film of silicone, which adds a lot less friction to the tracks and prevents rust and corrosion. Obviously, the door companies aren't going to tell you how to make your door last longer, but eventually the nylon felt will wear off, and it will wear off the galvanized finish of the tracks as well. You can probably see on this one. But yeah, remember, don't ever use WD-40 or anything else marketed for garage doors. It will gunk up and grease up your nylon felt edging, and it will turn black and sticky, and your door won't run very good at all. As you can see, this door is almost 20 years old and the fabric's almost brand new. The curtain lines up perfectly as well. We've got the tracks in a great position. And now for the moment of truth. Is it going to be quiet? Yes, we've done it. We have a quiet door. The neighbours are going to be ecstatic. Another great reason to get your door serviced or make your door not as noisy is so people don't know when you're coming or going. This could leave your home quite vulnerable, as a noisy door is basically an alarm system that alerts people when you've just left your house. I'm that roller door bloke. Thanks for watching.